I'm going to talk to you about the worst types of bread that you want to avoid eating, as well as some alternatives for when you're in the supermarket, when you want to make something at home. Now, bread's taken a bit of a beating over the last few years. It spikes your sugar. It can potentially cause weight gain. But is it bread's fault, or is it the type of bread? In a word, the type of bread that you want to avoid are supermarket breads. These are mass-produced on an industrial scale with extensive automation. And one study that we looked at compared industrial, artisanal, and homemade breads. And they found that artisanal bread had a lot more sugar and markers of something called the Maillard reaction that we'll talk about in a second. And that makes it not as good for you. In fact, something that I think you should avoid. So this is your typical supermarket bread here. Let me tell you a bit about supermarket bread. So there is a high degree of processing. So this is a processed food. It's more likely to contain additives and flavorings, mainly texturants, including emulsifiers, hydrocolloid, preservatives. It's gonna have a lot more things like vegetable oils in as well that shouldn't be anywhere near a bread, like sunflower and rapeseed. They contain higher amounts of sugar content because of the use of certain ingredients, notably soybean flour, which contains more sugar than wheat flour. And then you also have more markers of something called the Maillard reaction. So the Maillard reaction is a chemical reaction between proteins, your amino acids, and reducing sugars to create malonidins. And these are the compounds that give a distinctive aroma and flavor. It's very delicious, but it can potentially increase the number of carcinogens that you find in bread as well, with potential consequences to health. So this is your typical supermarket bread here. They all pretty much look the same. They're all wrapped in plastic. You can almost tell the difference between a bread just by like weighing it in your hands. It feels very soft and spongy. There isn't really much substance to them, unfortunately. And if you look at the ingredients, and often, like, you know, they've got these green things saying high in fiber, rich in whole grains. Just ignore that. Just go straight to the ingredients list. That is where they cannot lie. Ingredients: wholemeal wheat flour, water, yeast, vegetable oils, rapeseed, and sustainable palm. Palm's not sustainable. Salt, wheat gluten, emulsifiers, E481, E471, E472E, soya flour, like I just mentioned up the top here. Like, these will have more sugars in the flour, in the bread, because of the inclusion of soybean flour. Preservative, calcium propionate, flour treatment agent, ascorbic acid. A lot of ingredients that should not be in bread. Bread should just be a couple of ingredients, some flour, water, a bit of salt, a bit of mixing. That's all it requires. But because supermarkets have a job to create very cheap and very accessible foods, this is what we are left with. Now, I'm not saying that you should never, ever, ever have one of these ever again. If you want like a sarnie and, you know, you want to put your favorite Plowman's ingredients in, fine, you know, as a luxury item. But I feel a lot of people are using this as a daily, you know, something to spread some butter and jam on every single day. This is just pure sugar, unfortunately. I'd love to say that this is as cheap and accessible and it's actually got some health benefits. This really does not. This is not a daily staple, in my opinion. So that's supermarket bread. This is the kind of stuff that you want to avoid. Artisanal bread generally follows, I say generally follows traditional aspects of the homemade production techniques at high volumes, but without the mass production that's found in industrial settings. So these are typically more representative of the homemade bread, less processed process. They don't contain additives or flavorings, but artisanal bread can still be heavily processed and made with poor quality ingredients. Like an artisanal loaf produced with 100% refined white roller milled flour will still be considered more processed, even if it's a sourdough. So this is an example of artisanal bread. Rather than it being white bread, this is actually a better quality artisanal bread, because it's not just about the fact that it's artisanal, it's what they're putting into the bread itself. So this is a rye. It's very, very different in terms of the texture, the weight of it. It feels like a brick. It has a very, very dense, I mean, you couldn't do this with, I'm literally punching holes in it if I do that. Like this This is rock solid. This is going to have tons of fiber in. This has got a mixture of different grains. You can tell the structural intensity of this is so much better. And the rye flour doesn't have those nutrients stripped from the grain itself, which is where you have all the B vitamins. You've got all those different types of fibers. That is going to be microbe supporting, not microbe depleting. So this is an example of a good artisanal bread, but it does rely on a spectrum. So it really depends on what your baker or your artisanal bakery is actually putting into the bread. And they should be pretty transparent about that, as well as the lack thereof of additives. In the study that we looked at, where they compared homemade, artisanal, supermarket breads, the artisanal breads were classified as Nova 3, with the exception of a particular artisanal bread that was classified as Nova 4 because it contained an additive and ingredients such as powdered egg yolk. So just because you're artisanal, you don't get a free pass. Homemade breads, on the other hand, employ different cooking methods, generally steaming, baking, and toasting. This can impact bread quality and the formation of the volatile compounds that are found in the Maillard reaction. And one study found that the products of the Maillard reactions were less abundant in homemade bread compared to industrial bread over here, possibly due to lower baking temperatures. So one of the things that I think we kind of miss out on is the fact that I'm going to use this as an example of a homemade bread there, even though it's not technically a homemade bread. Homemade bread is going to be prepared in your own oven. You're going to have complete control of any additives, the type of flour that you're using, and the temperature. This is going to be really rapid. There's going to be a much quicker fermentation, if any, and they're going to use quick-acting yeast as well to get it to rise. So this is quite unnatural in a word, whereas this is a lot more natural in terms of the process used to create good quality bread. The question I always get is sourdough bread better? Now, sourdough is a dough fermented with lactic acid bacteria in addition to yeasts, and it's called a starter. Lactobacillus brevis or Lactobacillus plantarum or baker's yeast. The fermentation process adds many potential benefits. The first of which is nutrient absorption. So it can improve the inaccessibility of certain nutrients that you find in the grain, so your body can actually absorb these nutrients more efficiently when consuming sourdough bread compared to bread only made with yeast. So therein lies, a big difference there if you're getting true sourdough bread. There is also the suggestion that it improves gut health and digestion as well. So sourdough fermentation has been shown to reduce something called FODMAP levels. These are fermentable oligodisaccharides. People have problems with them to various degrees. If you're on a specific IBS diet, you'll be told to remove FODMAPs from your diet, and they're generally found in quite healthy ingredients. So garlic, brassica vegetables, chicory, artichoke. You find those also in wheat bread, but the sourdough process can potentially alleviate these gastrointestinal symptoms in sensitive people. So sourdough might have some benefits there, but there is a big caveat. The evidence is still very conflicted, and many studies do not show the benefits of sourdough bread compared to regular bread. Now, I don't know whether this is because they're not using true sourdough bread, because there is a lack of established and internationally recognized definitions of what a sourdough bread even is, i.e. the way it's made, using microbes and fermentation processes and the types of flour. It can vary hugely and potentially influence the nutritional properties of the bread itself. So that might be why there is conflicting evidence as to whether we know if true sourdough bread is that healthy. And so today, the beneficial effects of sourdough bread compared to other types of bread are not clear. Adding more confusion to this mix are the supermarkets who are marketing certain types of bread as sourdough bread. Because there isn't a clear definition of what sourdough bread actually means, they can get away with it. So if you're finding sourdough bread in your supermarket, I'd just be a little bit hesitant and actually, again, read the ingredients, see whether it is true sourdough bread. It shouldn't have additives in it. It shouldn't have any sort of suggestion of sustainable palm oil, soybean flour, none of this stuff. It shouldn't be in there. So just be really, really careful of where you're getting your sourdough bread from as well. If you're going to invest in bread, which is what I suggest people do, go to a proper baker, ask them about their process. It should take days. It shouldn't be done, mass produced using these kind of techniques that they do in the supermarkets. Some sections of supermarkets have the bakery section, and you have like a lovely sort of wooden stand, and the smell of that, like the Maillard reactions, those wonderful distinctive aromas and the flavors, and they place them on those wooden shelves, and you have like this lovely array of like different wholemeals and rye and all that kind of stuff. That's not a real bakery. That is a fake bakery that is essentially giving you the impression that you're getting a really, really good quality bread when you're not. They are employing the same mass-produced techniques in the back and producing the bread at the front, and that is not the type of bread that you want. So anything that you find in the supermarket, whether or not it's wrapped in plastic or whether it's something that they're producing in their bakery, I would really, really be cautious about, because it's not a true bakery. You're not going to get the benefits of whole, artisanal or homemade bread that you can find with far cheaper ingredients, with far better processes. Another question you'll be asking yourself is, are there any health benefits of having bread in your diet at all? Quality whole grain bread, I think, can be part of a healthy diet for most people. The reason why is because it contains fiber and nutrients. It definitely provides fiber, and there are nutrients like folate, iron, calcium, and magnesium, depending again on the type of flour that is being used. And when you're thinking about the perspective of your diet from what's processed and unprocessed, it is much better than other refined carbohydrates. So it's a good swap for things like white rice, definitely white bread, wraps, buns, rolls, English muffins, certain cereals, certain obviously pastries. You want to be moving up from that spectrum of highly refined white to less refined wholemeal breads to whole starchy vegetables or things like lentils, legumes that are minimally processed. So it can be part of a healthy diet, but you have to be quite specific about the types of breads that you're consuming. One of the other things I think that bread gets compared to are wraps. So wraps are, things that you wrap your chicken and lettuce in and stuff, really convenient for lunches and sandwiches on the go. Wraps can be very, very processed as well. So again, look at the ingredients. You'll see lots of different sunflower oils and vegetable oils. You'll see lots of preservatives. You'll see tons of things like calciums and emulsifiers. It is a hyper-processed product, so you want to make sure that these are not part of your daily staples. And that includes the grab-and-go sandwiches that you're getting from grab-and-go takeouts, convenient cafes, the big franchises that are all over the UK and the US. Those franchises are making their margins by using this type of bread, which is a ultra-processed product. Just a quick one. If you're enjoying this kind of content, you will love our free newsletter called Eat, Listen, Read. Every week, I send you a recipe that you'll absolutely love, something to listen to, something to read, sometimes something to watch, less than 3 minutes, and it will help you have a healthful, happier week. You can find that in the link down below. So whilst I believe that bread can be part of a healthy diet, it really depends on the quality of your bread as well. The quality of your carbohydrates actually matter. There was a study published in JAMA that found that substituting refined grains, starchy vegetables, and sugary beverages with equal amounts of whole grains, fruits, and non-starchy vegetables was tied to a decrease in weight over the 4-year study period. So this sort of simplistic idea that bread's going to make you gain weight and you shouldn't have any carbs in your diet, I think is overly simplistic. It really depends on the quality of your bread, the quality of your carbohydrates, not the fact that bread will make you lose weight, bread will make you gain weight, or bread's going to spike your sugar levels. It really depends on the quality of the bread, as well as what you eat it with as well. So don't forget that. I don't know many people that will just eat this toasted on its own. You usually would have this with a bit of fat, whether it's 100% peanut butter, or you're going to have some salad leaves on it, some extra virgin olive oil, some cheese, some other sources of protein, like whether it's lean fish or mackerel or something like that. You're going to have this as part of a food matrix. And so even though this has got some degree of processing in it, it's going to be a lot better than the other types of refined carbohydrates that you could potentially pair this with, like a bagel or a wrap, for example. So in terms of alternatives to supermarket bread, making your own, we've actually got a recipe on our app, soaked oats bread. You'll find this on the Doctor's Kitchen app. You'll be able to find that. Just download it using the link down below. This recipe actually has pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds, white sesame seeds, porridge, whole oats that are rolled, chia, flaxseed, buckwheat flour, bit of salt, bit of olive oil, bit of bicarb, and that's it. Like that, all the ingredients you can read, they're all super healthy. They are incredibly diverse. They're wonderful for your gut health. This is the kind of bread that you want to be consuming. And now there are some breads out there that are providing a similar sort of version of homemade breads that you can make at home. That's actually a gluten-free version. This is a brand that you can find in supermarkets, but not made by the supermarkets themselves. This is called Seedful, and they have a great list of ingredients on the front of the packaging as well, which I think is always like a bit of a telltale sign that they're proud, they're not trying to hide anything. And again, this has got oats, sunflower seeds, linseed, golden linseed, pumpkin seeds, chia, psyllium husk, organic apple cider vinegar, bit of salt. That's it. And this can be found in some supermarkets. And again, if you feel it, it's firm. It looks like proper bread. It's similar in weight and texture to this. So you can tell just from looking at how non-spongy it is, and like there's no structure to that whatsoever. This is a good product. The only issue with these is that they're a lot more expensive. This is 4 slices for £3, whereas you can make it on the Doctor's Kitchen app for less than a cup of coffee for a subscription for a month. And there's a free trial as well. If you want a checklist for the healthiest breads to go and eat, I can't go through every single brand, so I'm going to give you the sort of cheat sheet to how you can choose healthier bread. So the first thing is you want 100% whole grains as the first ingredient, like whole wheat or oats or barley or rye. It's the first thing you want to be looking for. Minimal ingredients. Quality bread should be 4 main ingredients: the grain, yeast, water, salt, or a sourdough starter as well. Maybe some seeds, maybe some extra virgin olive oil, nothing else. No emulsifiers, no preservatives, no need for any added minerals like calcium, none of that. You want it to be high fiber. So over 6 grams per 100 grams of product is how much fiber you want. The kind of breads that we create in the Doctor's Kitchen on the Doctor's Kitchen app are upwards of 10 grams. And we also have 8 to 9 grams of protein as well in our breads, but it's quite hard to get that in your regular bread or even your artisanal bread or baker's bread as well. And I think some bonus things that you'd want in a good quality bread or supercharged bread more so, things like flaxseed, because they add fiber and healthy fats. You also want a stone milled flour, a sourdough, sprouted grains. These all add extra nutrients that are absorbable for you as well. Local grains, if you wanted to support locally, and unbleached flour as well. I tend to go for organic where possible because I think organic is our sort of vote toward a more sustainable and cleaner landscape. But I don't think it's possible for everyone to go organic, just depending on where you are in the country as well. And the red flags, I've already sort of hit this home, I think, quite a bit. Emulsifiers, particularly things like CMC, also known as carboxyl methyl cellulose. It's commonly used in industrial bread to add volume and shelf life, and to gluten-free baking to add volume, much like gluten proteins do. It's linked to detrimental impacts on the gut microbiota and symptoms of digestive comfort. So if you see emulsifiers like CMC, carboxyl methyl cellulose, please do avoid those, and any preservatives, flavorings, added sugar, the other additives that I just talked about as well, soya flour because of the sugar issues. Please avoid those as much as possible. I hope this has been helpful. If I've missed any issues with breads that you think I should have approached or I should have discussed, then let me know. And let me know what your favorite breads are as well in the comments. I want to know. I want to know if I've missed any of the ones that I should be looking out for. If you love that episode, you'll love this one where I do a deep dive into the health benefits and the health disadvantages of certain types of oats. You can check that out right here.